Travel and Things in association with Sun Destinations, iconic destinations with amazing experiences, present In Conversation With. I'm your host, David Batsoffen, and today I am so chuffed to have as my guest a fellow colleague and current friend, Tom London, from the Tom London Show. Where else? Tom, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you, David. I wake up, as I get older, I wake up in the morning with a deeper appreciation of being alive and life itself. So I'm good. I'm on the top of the world. I'd warned you a minute before we started this that the parrots might start, and they've got impeccable timing. They've been quiet the whole morning, and now that's Billy trying to say hello to everybody. Sorry.
Now, before we go any further, behind you it says no more nights. Now, I'm assuming that more is Danish or something. No, it's not. No more lonely nights. Did you spray that on the wall, Tom?
You're close. It's no more. M-O-R is mother in Danish.
Yes, it is indeed.
So you're very close. No, this is wow. When I decided to put the show together, I'm very lazy when it comes to my own styling. I'm very lazy when it comes to sets, lighting, camera angles. Those are things that I think I'm not deficient. I'm just lazy. And I thought, no, you better put more, because I'm a radio broadcaster. You walk in looking like however you want, and video is completely different. So I thought I better put some effort into set. And I saw that your South African news channels like ENCA and Newsroom Africa have these beautiful backdrops. And I found out who made them. It's a lady called Monique Robinson from a company called Flash Design. And I asked her if she could make me a similar backdrop with the same material that they use in television studios. So this is, I'll just tilt the screen up. You can see that it's just it's a backdrop.
It's all smoke.
It's not actually a wall. Yeah, she did a good job, I'm really impressed with this material.
Because I've been watching this new incarnation of the Tom London Show since its inception. And I've been looking carefully to see if it's green screened, and it's not. And I've been meaning to ask you, but I thought, no, I don't want to give away the smoke and mirrors trick to the rest of your
I don't mind.
Followers. But now we have. Because my wall has just undergone a metamorphosis. I've repainted it and I haven't rehung anything. So I just stuck a picture in the background because it looked a bit empty. But we're not here to talk about walls.
But actually, walls is an interesting topic in podcasts, like the psychology of walls. Because the way I see it is when a viewer is watching a podcast, the eye has to go somewhere.
Yeah.
And I think if you've got an incredibly cluttered background, that keeps the viewer's eye away from you or the guest. So I prefer the backgrounds with just one or two or three things someone can take a look, but then back to the subject. I don't know. It's just my own little thoughts on it.
I don't know about you, but now that you've got me onto this topic, if I'm watching a podcast or even an interview and there are books on a shelf, I try and read the titles of the books.
I know. And you try and look at that. What is that little knickknack? And did it move since the last show? And that's what I'm talking about. That kind of distraction. I don't want my viewers to have. I want them to be watching me.
There was some British comedian, and I can't remember who it was, but during lockdown, he had a dildo on his mantelpiece that was in shot on purpose.
Yes, of course.
He just left it there. And then people would comment and he'd go, oh, I didn't know it was their type of thing.
Yeah.
So, Mr. London, I was trying to figure out this morning how long we've known each other. Because you were probably 18 when I first met you, 18 or 19 at Canai Community Radio.
I was 23 years old.
Okay. Well, I was close, there or thereabouts. You now in your 50s. Younger. I've just turned 70. And time has been trying to turn 70.
I thought you were 60.
No, we're
wow.
Yeah.
You're looking good.
Thank you. Now let me take off and show you the real face. What did they say about us? We have faces for radio.
Radio.
Yeah. And both of us have dipped in and out since then. and I think that the problem with radio, and I think you've mentioned it on your show, and we'll get around to this new iteration of the
radio
Tom
station
London
managers.
No, we may have to work for one or two of those still.
I thought about it the other day. I've dissed them so much on my show. I've pretty much cancelled out any chance of getting a job on commercial radio on this continent.
But the problem is, and that is the problem. Commercial radio, they're few and far between. We don't have mom and pop radio stations like they have in America, where everybody's broadcasting out of a garage. And also there's the demographic and the limitations that places on you is an irritant more than anything else. And as you said, I think it was last night, on your podcast, the problem with radio is once it gets into your blood, it's addictive. Yes, you can step away for it for a while, but you will come back to it in some form or another. And you have now trying to recreate our sort of heyday when we worked at Talk Radio 702 and the interaction with the audience that we had back in those days, which was proper and it was cool, and we had great topics and we had good interactions and we fought with people. You know, we had opinions back then. Now you can't have opinions. Everything's got to be, I don't know, book-ended with what's the word I'm looking for?
Disclaimers and polite
disclaimers, language.
Yeah. You talk about commercial radio. I think anyone who's in an industry and leaves it will be inclined to say the problem with the industry. So I think that's normal. But I do think it's good to look at broadcasting if you're a broadcaster or you're interested in it, and ask yourself the question whether it's got better, whether it's got worse, what the state of the industry is. So I do ask myself those questions. And if I was just being logical about it and not emotional about it, I would say that the industry is probably healthy. They're still making money. The commercial radio stations are doing okay. The shareholders are probably happy. The formats are tight. So you're hearing decent music radio specifically, well put together music radio. You've got new competitors like Heart that have grown from a community into a commercial station that are making great inroads as far as market share is concerned. So when you look at the numbers, you go, okay, this industry is healthy. But I think if you're over the age of 50, you come from an era where it was only radio for a while in your life before television started. And you would have heard radio being presented by people that had real training in the science and the craft of radio. And I think probably any age under 40, any broadcaster under the age of 40 missed out on a lot of the mentorship and the training programs and the standards that were actually set inside radio stations. I think there was a shift when online came and you've got influencers, and so now you grab someone, put them on air because they've got 2 million followers, and you can bring them into the fold, so to speak. And that's good. You know, it's entertainment, it's showbiz, but I'm not quite sure that radio has the same broadcasting standards that we were used to 3 or 4 decades ago. I think it's specifically when it comes to presenters and presentation, there's not as much knowledge floating around as there was in the veins of your John Birkses and your Clark McKays, your Bob Mabenas, the people we call legends.
We do indeed.
It's a pity there wasn't a mentorship program for young people in broadcasting to take skills from the older guys before they die.
You know, you spoke on your show last night of broadcaster ego, and I think it's exactly that. I was asked when I was at 702 why I didn't do the morning show, and I said because there are about a half a dozen people I would have to kill in order to get that slot, because that's just the way it worked. There was a hierarchy, and you just had to deal with it. It was the same as any other commercial station at the time. And you mentioned the Bob Mabenas. I think the sort of last of the Mohicans, if I could call him that, is Alex J, who when you listen to his voice on radio and listen to the others, and you go, oh, so that's how it should have been, or that's how you speak on radio.
It goes all the way to the mic. You can take it all the way back to the very beginning of what you need to be as a broadcaster.
Yep.
And that's mic technique.
Yeah.
And it's something we learned through practicing with people who knew how to do it and observing and picking up tips or being taught. And I know when I broadcast, I have muscle memory when it comes to that. I instinctively know where the microphone is. I'll move it when I need to. I'll move off mic when I need to. I'll get closer when I want to get warmer. I'll pull back when I want to project. You can hear just by listening to radio broadcasters. You can hear that very many young radio broadcasters, and I don't mean this as a criticism to knock young radio broadcasters. I point this criticism at the industry because it's radio station management that should be putting programs in place, simple things like mic technique sessions. And I can hear a lot of broadcasters on radio now, they're screaming into the mic from 10 centimeters away, and the processors are working overtime to try and put a decent sound out there. They're very lucky they've got processors behind them.
Yeah,
this is all very technical stuff. Yeah.
Let's go back. Let's take my viewers back to a young Tom London.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So let's go back to let's go back to matric. Did the Tom London then at 17, 18 know what he wanted to be, or did you sort of wander around through a maze of careers before landing, sometimes as we all did, into broadcast almost by accident?
I was a problem child, David. I battled to fit into the conventional schooling system. I'd spent a year in the US in American schools in 1986, and then came back to South Africa, back into a very rigid system that was very different to what I just experienced. And I battled to get back into it. And I begged my parents to let me go to Damlin High School in the Johannesburg CBD. And they said, not a chance. That's where all the reprobates go, and it costs too much, and it's 50 Ks from home. We lived in Springs. And eventually, when I was 16, I convinced them. And so for 2 years, my last 2 years of school, I went to school in the Joburg CBD. It was an incredible experience. It was at the height of the political violence between the ANC and the IFP. There was a lot of violence in the CBD back then. Crime levels were high. It was a challenge to walk from Park Station to my school and back every morning. A real challenge to make sure you weren't mugged and you stayed alive. And I think that gave me a bit of an edge, because I was 16 years old on the streets of Johannesburg and learning how to deal with a really complex environment. And so I was already starting to think I need to do something edgy. I wanted edge in my, I had it. I wanted an edgy career. And I had three things I had in mind. One was acting. I think I was quite good at acting as a teenager. The other was movie directing or radio DJ. And I had these three things. I couldn't decide which one I wanted to be. So I thought, let me try movie directing first. There was one course available at the Pretoria Technikon, 35mm film in this country. So there was only one place you could go to study movie directing. And I went to the interview at Pretoria University or Technikon. And they said, have you been to the army? And I said, not yet, sir. And they said, oh, thank you very much. You can go. And I went, what? Is that the only question? And they said, yes. And I said, why? And they said, in our experience, if you haven't been to the army, you don't have enough discipline to get through this course. And they told me that I couldn't. And I thought, well, there goes my Hollywood movie directing career. Let me become an actor. And my family had a friend, a lady who had studied at RADA in London and had acted professionally. And she sat down with me and explained the acting business. And as she spoke, I could see, oh boy, there's not much money in this. Until you become one of the biggest stars in the world, you starve, and you could starve for 20 or 30 years. And I thought, I don't want to starve. So the only thing that was left on this list, not that it was least important, but it was on the list, was radio DJ. And at 18 or 19 years old, I had all the confidence in the world, no experience, but a lot of, and I marched into 702 and said, I want to work here. And they said, all right, do this audition script, record it into a tape recorder at home. I did that. I sent it in, and they sent me a letter saying, thank you very much. Your audition's on file at the moment. We're very have a good life. And I thought, that's not good enough. So I went with my audition tape and into 702 in Atkinson House in those days, Elof Street, Johannesburg. and spoke to Rob Vickers, who I think was program manager then. And
he
I said,
was
what was
indeed.
wrong with this? And he said, you're too young, kid. You're 19 years old. Our listeners are in their 40s and 50s, and you're not going to be able to relate to them. So you can't do this job. And I said, well, what do I need to do? Because I was desperate to work at 702. That was the station I wanted to work at. And he said, go away for 10 years. And I went, what do you mean go away for 10 years? He said, well, that's at the very least, you got to go away for 10 years. And I said, and do what? He said, do life. Do everything, do anything, go left, go right, live 100 lives in 10 years. Then you'll have the experience to come back and do talk radio. And I'm not sure that I consciously took that advice, but it's just how the next 10 years panned out for me. I did go and do all sorts of things. I worked in factories, I worked in retail shops, I built a restaurant chain, I worked on community radio, I made television programs, I got into the music business, I sold houses, I did 100 different things. And then eventually got into radio, but not at 702, it was at Smart FM, and then very shortly after that, Canny FM, where I met you, that amazing community station in Sandton back in 95.
It was a great community station, and it also, there you had the likes of Richard Jones, who was my radio mentor. Ex-Capital Radio, who, if you listened, he would take notes after our show and he gave me a list one day of words. And I said to him, what are these? He says, these are the words you use too much.
Your vocal crutches.
Go away and become aware of them, because you're not. You just
see, that's part of the training.
Yeah.
That's part of the training that's missing. And even to this day, at the age of 51, and after doing this for so many years, every show, as soon as the show's finished, I watch every show. I spend an hour watching myself, looking for stuff like that. Vocal crutches. The one I'm using at the moment is right. So I have to keep reminding myself not to use the word right.
Yeah, I use the word moss. I use the word moss.
It's a constant battle.
Yeah. And you don't even realize it. But interesting, your getting into 702 and mine are not too dissimilar, because I tried for 2 years to get in. And when eventually I got the phone call, and I remember distinctly, I was in a car park, and Rena Broomberg, who was then station manager, called me and said, where are you? We'd like you to come in. We have a slot for you. And I said, I'll be there in 2 minutes. I was in Benmore at the time. They'd moved into Sandton. And I said, you can let me say, good morning. My name is David Batsoffen, and you're listening to Talk Radio 702. And then I'll go home. I don't even need a show. I just want. And my audition tape had landed with her PA, and had been in a drawer for 2 years, because the PA and I became very friendly. And eventually I said to her, could I have my tape back, please? And she said, how do you know I've got it? I said, you have. And you've had it for 2 years, haven't you? Sure. Rena was part of the board at Canny Community Radio. So she'd knew my work there. And that was the beginning of 5 years at 702 until...
But my entry wasn't as simple as that, David. After community radio, I went to work at then 94.7.
Okay.
And I spent 6 months at the radio station. I think by my second show, I knew it wasn't going to work out. It was highly formatted, as it should be. It was a nighttime show. I didn't have any space to talk beyond 94.7 Highveld stereo, all the hits all the time, and then press the next button. And I thought, I just spent 2 years interviewing people and having the time of my life, saying what I want, and now I've got to sit in this very narrow lane. And the radio station was thumping. It was the radio station to work for at the time, but it wasn't for me. And I then got an offer from Radio Bop to do the afternoon drive. It was too good to resist. It would have made me the first white person to do a drive show on a so-called black radio station in this country, and I took the offer. But 94.7 and Prime Media were not happy with me when I left. They'd just given me this dream job, and I thumbed my nose at it. I suppose that's how you could look at it. And so they banned me. They told me I was never allowed to come back. In those days, they'd say you banned from the building. Yeah. And so I was banned from the building. And so fast forward 2 or 3 years where I'm like, no, I got to get onto 702. And I called them and I said, I want to come work for you. And they said, but you're banned from the building. They still remember 2 years later. And I said, oh, come on, just give me a shot. And they said, no, you're banned from the building. We don't want you here. And
do it from the car park.
I made it my mission. I was running a restaurant in Bologna at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, no. I'm giving myself 1 year to get into this radio station. And I would call every day. I would call Dan Moyane every day. And in those days, I'd send through faxes every single day. And the calls would be like this. Hi, Dan Moyane here. I'd say, hi, it's Tom London. Dan, how are you? And he'd say, all right. And you, Tom? And I'd say, when can I come and work for you? And he'd say, but we don't want you to work for us. And I'd say, all right, I'll speak to you soon, Dan. I put the phone down. Tomorrow morning, call Dan again. Say, Dan, can I come and work for you yet? And he said, but you spoke to me yesterday, Tom, and I told you we don't want you here. Said, all right, bye, Dan. Next morning, pick up the phone again. Hi, Dan, it's me again. Just checking if you've changed your mind. And I did this to Dan Moyane for a whole year, until Rena and Dan eventually said, oh, for goodness sake, give this guy come and work. So on one of my calls, Dan said, okay, you can come and do Thursday, midnight to 4. Mm-hmm. And I said, is that my slot? And he said, no, it's not your slot. It's one show. Come and do midnight to 4. You do your show you've wanted, and then you go away and you don't come back. And I took it. I went and did the midnight to 4 show on a Thursday night, and Friday morning back on the phone with Dan Moyane. Dan, when's my next show? And he said, okay, you can do next Thursday, midnight to 4, but don't think you've got a job. And so it went until I was in. But people have got long memories of radio.
I know that midnight to 4 slot only too well. I did it for 5 years, but I started off on a Sunday morning with an hour before Barry Wronger, which was quite eye-opening, working with Barry. And we had some nice handovers, and people thought we hated each other, but we didn't. We got on extremely well, but we had a lot of fun. We really and truly did back in those days. So fast forward to now. No more lonely nights behind your head. A new hairstyle, older and wiser, although older perhaps, not so sure about wiser for both of us. I know people say to me, are you in your second childhood? I go, I haven't left the first one yet.
It's funny, yesterday I was with a friend and he's got kids, and the little girl who's 11 years old was talking about a bully at school who stamped on her umbrella. And I was just chatting with her, and she said, Uncle Tom, you are so wise. And I went, hold on, kid, hold on. Okay. Uncle Tom's not as wise as you think he is. He makes lots of mistakes in life. We all make mistakes.
But Tom, they say without darkness you won't appreciate light.
For sure.
That type of idiom. And I think without making mistakes, if you went through life, anybody went through life without a single mistake, you would not appreciate the high. You've got to have highs and lows. There has to be color in your life. I'm not talking radical. I'm not talking radical things like going out and murdering somebody and then being sorry for it afterwards.
Yeah.
But take the wrong job. Go to the supermarket at the end of the month and tender your debit card and just hope to heck that there's enough money in it to pay for the groceries that you've put down, the bottle of milk and the loaf of bread that you're hoping you can afford. I walked in yesterday, there was a box of salty cracks on the table in the kitchen that my wife had brought in. And I remember salty cracks was only if you could really, really afford them. And it was normally by the middle of the month, there was no more salty cracks.
No more salty cracks. I used to live by the mantra, no regrets.
Yeah.
It was easy to say when I was younger. And as I get older, I look back on decisions made or actions I've taken, and I do have regrets. The things I would have, there are things if at the time, if I knew what I knew now, I would have done differently. But would I change anything in my life to get to where I am today? No, because those things that I regret pushed me down a path that took me to where I am today. So I have this interesting combination of I wouldn't change anything, but I do regret things that have happened and I've done in my life. Absolutely.
We can't not regret those. Sometimes you regret them the moment that they happen. Other times it takes takes a little while to process, and then you go, maybe I shouldn't have done, sliding doors, turn left, turn right. We all get to a point where we have to make those decisions, and sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. So how did No More Lonely Nights come about? Because I know that you've tried this before. About a year ago, I think, you did this whole Facebook thing.
Probably, I was actually looking at it the other day to see how long ago it was. It was in 2018.
You're kidding?
So it's 5 years ago.
Wow.
And I'll tell you how that came about. I'll give you a quick run through. I was in commercial broadcasting until 2008. I then took a job in corporate. I worked for Vodacom for 6 years in running media and content for them. And then I got a bit tired of the corporate environment. I had done what I wanted to do. I could see if I wanted to stay and spend the next 10 years there coasting, I could, but I wasn't happy with that. I moved down to Stellenbosch and got involved in venture capital and launching these companies that angel investors get involved in. And I spent 2 years doing that, living a very big life. But I just found that kind of world there's a lot of smoke and mirrors. I like hot dog stands where you buy 10 hot dogs and you sell 10 hot dogs and you mark them up 100% and you know you made 10 rand.
Yeah.
In that world, the businesses haven't even opened yet, and people are trading and buying and selling, and they haven't even opened. And I thought, well, this isn't for me. Whenever something isn't for me in life, I've tended to move away from it and do something else. And then I came back to Johannesburg and I started making content, video content for businesses, for their online properties. People were starting to want video. And that's what I've been doing as a job for 10 years, 2013 till now, I would say, roundabout, making content for other people. And I've made a lot of online content for small and some large businesses. I did the Outer Hour for Outer, which was a live video show for 4 years. So I spent a lot of time making content for other people. 2018, I put on a show in the morning called DDH, which I didn't want to call a show because I knew it wasn't going to be professional. I didn't have a proper microphone. I didn't have the kind of technology that I've got now. It was very much just me sitting in the spare room, monkeying around for an hour in the morning. And I did it because my very best friend had died in a house fire. And I was at his house at the time. Yeah. And it was just this very traumatic experience. And the night it happened on a Saturday morning, and Saturday night I checked into a hotel. I was on my own. I went to the Hilton Hotel in Sandton because I knew their rooms were quiet and dark. And I shut the curtains and I lay on the bed in complete darkness. And I remember thinking two things. My first thought was, thank God I'm alive. It was the first time in my life that I really, really felt, wow, I'm alive. I understood what that feeling was. And the other thought was, Tom, how are you going to get through this? This is a deeply traumatic event that can wreck your life. How are you going to make it through this grief and this trauma? And the only answer I could come up with was, I need to keep finding the happiness or the joy in life and pulling it out of this mess. And that's where that came from, your daily dose of happiness. I became obsessed with this concept of happiness, and I wanted to share it with other people, and I wanted other people to join me, and let's just try and create some joy. And so I did it on a very unprofessional level and very much for myself, I must say, for my own healing. And I ran that little show for a year, and then my mom died. And I thought, but now I can't be happy because now I
shouldn't be laughing. Died. I'm sorry. Yeah.
I know. I mean, no, but it is, these are we think we know everything, and we go down that road, think you got it mastered. And that's where I was. I was about to become the world expert on happiness. And then my mom died.
Yeah.
And I sat there going, but I can't be happy, and I can't push happiness, and I can't sell it, and I can't share it right now. And so I stopped the show. And it made me realize that the pursuit of happiness is great, but you're not going to be happy every day of your life. And there are going to be times in your life where you're going to be unhappy for an extended period of time. And that's the challenge. The challenge is not actually trying to be happy every day. The challenge is trying to maintain a level head through the good and the bad in life. So I changed my philosophy on that. And No More Lonely Nights was set up because I live alone. Sometimes I've got a girlfriend and then I don't live alone, but when I don't, I live alone. And I like being alone. I don't mind it. I play my music that I want to play. I love country music like you, David, and a lot of people that I meet don't. So I go, oh, country music. So when I'm alone, I get to listen to my country music and do all the things I like to do. But at night, there are times when I wish I had someone just to chat to. And I thought, let me put a show on for people who are in that position or not, who want to gather around and chat to other people. And so I thought, let's call it Lonely Nights, because that's when you really want companionship. And now I've got a problem because I'm starting to pick up international viewers and the time zones are throwing everything. So I got people joining from Detroit in Michigan and Ottawa in Canada, and it's 11 o'clock in the morning there, and people in Sydney that are waking up at 6 a.m. And this is ultimately, if there's going to be an international audience, it's not going to work. It's going to have to change.
No, listen, do like Jimmy Buffett said. It's 5 o'clock somewhere. It's as simple as that.
Well, maybe you've given me the answer to my problem. Thank you.
There you go. Tom, would you believe we're almost at the end of our little chat? No. Time, this is what happens. Time just zips by. So before Zoom goes clip and we're gone, how do people find No More Lonely Nights or the show? Because Lonely Nights we all have.
Yeah, you can do that if you lie in your bed long enough. It's a good question, because I assumed everyone knows how to do everything. I assume people know how to find your show. I assume people know how to send voice notes, but there are a lot of people that are still getting up to speak the tech. So you go along to either Facebook or YouTube, and you just type in the Tom London Show in the search bar, and it will take you to my page. And the page is called the Tom London Show on Facebook. It's also on YouTube. You can subscribe on YouTube, get notifications, or you can like the page on Facebook. And we're on air 9 o'clock Central Africa time every Monday to Friday.
For an hour.
For an hour, yeah.
Yeah. Did you set that limitation?
Yeah, I did, because I didn't want to work 3 hours. Like, I thought, okay.
Fair enough.
If I was on radio, they'd tell me you got a 3-hour show.
Yeah.
And the challenge of producing content on your own for 3 hours.
And don't we know it?
I thought that would be a mistake. And then I thought, well, how long should it be? And I thought an hour is a comfortable length for me and for the viewer. And so I went with an hour. It's flexible. Sometimes I run 10, 15 minutes over, but I try and keep it to about an hour.
That's great. So No More Lonely Nights with the inimitable Tom London, and run by the community, because you start a topic and then people just chip in and it goes down this road and that road. And you can control where it's going if you really wanted to, or you could just let it run. Monday to Friday, you say, on both Facebook and YouTube. Go, it's episode. You're already in episode. It'll be episode 27 tonight.
That's right.
Because but you've got to start somewhere. Tom, it's been wonderful chatting to you. Keep up the good work. I know I listen to your show on a semi-regular basis. And I do enjoy the interaction with the other listeners, because it reminds me of the heyday that we shared back in the days of talk radio. My guest here on In Conversation with today has been Tom London. Tom, thank you very much for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks for inviting me, David. Thank you.